Hello, we're going to look at the Akixi service running on Gamma Horizon. First thing we're going to do is log in. Secure password. Once we've logged in, we've now got access to the reporting pane. Once we open that, we've got a list of all the reports that we've got available to us on the left hand side. I'm going to close that to give us a bit more space. And there are principally two levels of the Akixi service. There's the 1000 and 2000. Now, all the reports from the start here, going up to and including the report that we're looking at now, the desktop Wallboard, are examples reports you get on the 1000, and then these extra ones here, with 2 stars by them, are examples of the premium level reports that you can get on Horizon with the Akixi 2000. Now, we're going to start off with the basic. The historic call list. Now, what this shows us is a list of all the calls in or out of this Horizon customer. So we can see, for example, that call was answered. We can see that call was advanced. For example, so that came in on the brochure line, rang Dylan Michaels for 24 seconds, was not answered, then went on to extension 126. And we can see these calls here and here were abandoned. We'll do a bit more about abandoned calls as we go through. We've got the date, the time, and we've got the segment number. Now, the segment number refers to a feature that we describe as cradle-to-grave call reporting. And in simple terms, what that does is it enables us to track each and every single segment of a call. So if a call comes in and is transferred several times, we can track that call from start to finish. We can see that this is the caller ID of the person that called in, the telephone number they called, the DDI description, and the extension where the call rang presented to. Ring time, talk time, in this instance, for example, no, but if there was talk time, and was it answered yes or no, and these are all external inbound calls, but we'll obviously show you outbound calls as well. If the call was transferred, we can even see where the call was transferred to here. The account code feature is a feature that within Horizon that enables you during a call to enter in some digits to classify that call. I'll give you some further information on that as we go through. Now, this is the most basic report, but before I show you some of the other reports, I'm going to show you the generic controls that are applicable to all the reports within Akixi. The first one is the time frame. So at the moment, this report is being run over today, but it could be yesterday, this week, last month, this month. Or we can even select real time from here. Now, this particular report isn't that interesting in real time. When we get to some of the others, they are. But the important thing is, from the user's perspective, it's very, very easy for them to select the type of report that they want to look at, and then the time frame over they want that report to run. Next, going along to the left, this is where you can zoom in or out. So if you're going to use this on a plasma screen, you're going to look at a different resolution than if you're running this on a tablet. You've got the ability to select and choose there. Here, this is where you can apply an instant filter. So for example, I could say, look, I just want to look at Jacob, Holly and Ethan's calls, or I could, with the right mouse button, say, look, I just want to exclude Katie, Benjamin and Hannah's calls. Very simple, quick and easy filter. You've then got the ability to export in CSV, so if you want to slice, dice, manipulate that report, typically in something like Excel, you can do that. And then you've got 3 different types of print: PDF, RTF and HTML print. Next to that, we've got the modify button. This is where you can customize the reports. So at the moment we're looking at the historic call list, but these are the different reports that you've got access to, depending upon whether you're running the 1000 or 2000 version of the service. And then you could go in and call this whatever you wanted to. You could call this my special historic call list, so that you can use it for particular purposes and slice, dice, change it. You've then got your own separate CAN template that you can do what you want to in future. I'm going to put that back to standard. Now we've got display options, date, time and filtering. Filtering is where you can really drill down and get down to the particular bits of information or particular call records and so forth that you really want to get down to. I'll give you some examples and so forth. We're looking at the Acne Travel Company at the moment. This is an example sample data that we've got, and under telephone number, the example that arises here is where, if you get the situation where someone calls in and says, hey look, I called in the other day and you took 3 minutes to answer the call, I was transferred 15 times, I was put on hold for half an hour, I was promised this, I was told that. If you've ever had that call, and most companies that have customers do tend to get that call occasionally, let me show you what you can do, because you can say, hey Mr. Jones, I'm really, really sorry, apologise for that. I've no idea what happened, but let me try and get to the bottom of it. If you can let me have your telephone number, I'll make some inquiries, give you a call back with what I find. At which point you can enter in the telephone number in here, press OK, and it will then give you a list of all the calls to or from that particular telephone number. Potentially then you could call the person back and say, hey Mr. Jones, I'm really sorry, managed to find out what happened. I can see you called in on Thursday, you were answered by Bart after 25 seconds. We've got a free mouse mat in the post to you because he should have answered you within 12 seconds. As an example, I can see he was speaking to you for 4.5 minutes. He then transferred you to Mavis. Mavis was speaking to you for a further 7 minutes, and then she placed you on hold. You get the idea. You'd see all that information. That's the cradle to grave call reporting. You can specify again here the different extensions that are required to be included, and also, for example, the queues or hunt groups that are applicable. You can say, hey look, I'm only interested in looking at either the inbound, outbound, external, inbound, outbound, trunk to trunk, and that's typically where calls might come in and you might transfer it to someone out in the field on their mobile phone. We can still track that. And internal calls. Now bear in mind, in the hosted VoIP world, an internal call can easily straddle John O'Groats to Land's End. Or it could be your telesales people working from home, or literally just anyone working from home or so forth, wherever. We can track that. And you can even obviously track if people are, perhaps calling each other internally from one office to another. So the London office to the Brighton office to the Edinburgh office as required. We can also, for example, under answer type say, look, only show me calls that were not answered, calls that were answered, abandoned, advanced or overflowed. We'll come back here. This is something quite powerful this can potentially provide. And then we've got the ability to particularly select any DDIs that you have. So errands DDI, or you could have particular DDIs for sales lines, etc. You can select them there. The account code feature. This is where, during a call, you can enter in a code that you can subsequently represent a classification of that call. So the example might be that, hey look, you might say, well, we're taking X number of calls this day, week. What we don't know is how many of those calls are sales calls, how many of them are complaints, how many of them are, how do we find your warehouse, and how many are other. Now, if, for example, you realise, well, actually, a really high proportion of those calls are, how do we find your warehouse, then perhaps you could do something with your website information or materials you're sending out. And what you can do, what I'll explain to you is during the call you can enter in a code that corresponds to that. So for example, a sale could be corresponding to a 111, a complaint could be a 555, and a how do we find your warehouse could be a 777. And then literally I'll show you some reports where you can obtain that information to get some analysis on the call spread. That's what we do there. Now the other field, other tab, is where I describe this as the black belt Akixi screen. This is advanced call filtering. So you could, for example, say I want to look at any call that came in and it was answered by Bart and then subsequently transferred to Mavis and ended up, in voicemail, for example. Or show me other calls where there was a talk time higher than 1 hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes, whatever. Or show me anyone that's been put on hold for longer than, etc. This is where you can really drill down and find those particular bits of information. Fields is where the user can select any of the fields they want to see. Now, these are the fields that you've got as standard on that particular report template, but you can go in and add, remove, and change and modify, and make that report as simple or as comprehensive as you want it to be. Scheduling, the example here is where people say, hey, I tell you what, Bart, a lot of information there, but rather than me go in and check that information out via the website every day, week, or whatever, actually I'd like that report sent to me daily, weekly, monthly, on these days of the week, at this time of day, and in this format, and it will automatically be delivered to your email box. Now, another use case scenario I often get requests for is where people say, tell you what, a lot of information, a lot of data, but what would be valuable to this business, if you could show us all the calls that we were unable to answer when we had a really, really busy period, then hang on a minute, that might be something that could potentially have a favourable impact on our bottom line. Well, let me show you what we can do. So, for example, we could go to Filter, under Answer Type, select Abandoned Calls. If we were to rerun that report, rather than rerun that report, here's one I prepared earlier. So this is now the same report, but only showing me abandoned calls, and we've got the date, the time, the segment, the caller ID, the DDI, the person it rang for, etc., etc. But these are all abandoned calls, and it's great, so we've got the information here. With those telephone numbers, we could potentially call those people back. But unfortunately, there's a lot of noise in this report as well. What you can't tell from this report is perhaps whether or not any of these people have subsequently called back, or you may have called them back apologetically or just coincidentally, whatever. You've got no way of sort of filtering that out. So we have another report that we describe as the unreturned lost calls list, which many of our customers describe as the Kerching report. Let me show you why. So this is now showing you this report, and it's running in real time. So as I describe this, it could well update and change. Now what this is showing you is every single time a call comes in that is not successfully answered, an abandoned call, another one appeared there, it will detail that caller in red. So you can see the date, the time, the caller ID, the DDI, where it rang, how it rang, who it rang for, in red. But if that same person calls back in the same day and is successfully answered, or you apologetically call that person back and are successfully answered, it will turn that call green in real time, automatically, dynamically. So the red calls are the abandoned calls that still need someone's attention. The green ones have been successfully dealt with at some point in the day. What the user can also do is left mouse button click here and use this to call the person back. That is an abandoned call recovery system in its own right. That's the unreturned lost call list. The next report I'll show you is the extension list. And we're looking at the extensions. We've zoomed that up. Let's zoom that back down a bit, maybe. We can see who is or isn't literally on the phone at this particular point in time. So we're looking at it in real time, but we could look at this over the week. So, good example, someone might say, hey look, I would like to see who has or hasn't been making the calls that they should have been this week. That's what would be delivered to your email box. But let's go back to real time, because there's a bit more we can do in real time. So for example, we can see Luke has currently got a call ringing, and we see Oscar and Tyler have got calls that are currently in progress. What we can also do though is set up some coaching alarms. So these are the fields that I have on that report as standard at the moment, but you can go in and add, remove, change, modify, make it as simple or as comprehensive as you'd like it to be. And what you can also do against any of those fields, you can add an alarm. So for example, I can say, hey look, if the ring time on any of these calls is higher than 5 seconds, I'd like to know about it. Likewise, I've said here, if the talk time in this instance is higher than 2 minutes, I'd like to know about it. Now 2 minutes in the real world is probably a bit short, but in your environment there will be a period that you're saying, hey look, if you're on the phone for longer than this, if you've not managed to get to the appointment by this stage, or if you've got a customer complaint and you've not managed to placate them by 25 minutes in, or whatever it is you need to escalate, whatever those timings are, you can put it on there and this will show you when something's happening. Now let's go and show you what that looks like. So we can see, for example, that actually if Alexander Steen takes more than 5 seconds to answer that, there you go, it's starting to flash red. Now what I can also do is left mouse button click and I can send that call on to another extension, or I can pick it up myself, literally using this screen. We can also see, for example, Tyler Sword has been over 2 minutes on that call, so again that's an alarm. And we can see also that these people here, their average answer time is exceeded the threshold that we want to set, which is 16 seconds. So anyone that's got an more than 16 second average answer time is going to be highlighted here. And in some environments, people actually would have this literally displayed on a board. Now there's some more that you can do from here. You can, for example, use this to transfer calls, make calls. You've got make, place call, hold, answer and release calls. But you can also sort on any of these fields. So you could, for example, sort on who's the person that's got the highest talk time today. Is it the top, the person with the lowest at the bottom? Or the person that's answered the most calls can be at the top or the bottom. Or you can also have, for example, when the first person that answers 100 calls, they'll start flashing red as well. So, you know, there's different ways in which you can use that information. That's the extension list. Extension BLF is the next report, and this is an alternative way of looking at extensions. So at the moment we're looking at about 30 extensions, and we're looking at them in real time, and this could be potentially literally just over the left hand side of my screen or as required. And I can see who is or isn't on the phone at any one time. I've got the ability to transfer calls, etc. But let me give you an example of where this is particularly useful, where you have an environment where you're transferring calls and handling calls a lot. So the call might come in and someone says, hey look, can I speak to Luke Cooley? Now I can see Luke is on the phone at the moment. What I can also do though is put my mouse over them and I can see Luke's statistics, and I can see that currently Luke's been on that call for 50 seconds, but his average talk time is 1 minute 34. Now in the real world, if that would actually happen, I'd be saying, hey look, do you know what, Luke's actually on the phone at the moment, but I suspect he's going to come free quite shortly. And correspondingly though, if I did that and saw that Luke had only been on there for 2 minutes, but his average talk time was 25 minutes, I'm then in a really good position to be able to say, look, do you know what, Luke's actually just gone on the phone, he's probably going to be a little while longer. Best thing I can do is take a message, I'll make sure he gets it and gives you a call back later. So you're now empowering someone that's taking those calls with the right type of information to be able to handle them very, very effectively. Calls by DDI, next report. This is great in marketing environments. Marketeers like this report because it's a great way of being able to track the effectiveness of different marketing campaigns and so forth. So we're looking at that in real time. So this is showing us all the different DDIs, but you could, for example, just have this looking at over this week or month or today, etc. Where this is potentially very, very useful, you could, for example, if you've got a marketing campaign that you're putting out over the next week or quarter, year, whatever, you can actually have different numbers. You can use what people refer to as NGNs, non-geographical numbers. They can all still come back to the same answering group, but for example, you might have an advert and you're going to put that in the national press. You're going to put that on the side of buses. You're going to put that on various websites, and you might even have it from a banner strung behind an airplane flying over the Glastonbury Festival. Well, there are 4 different types of advertising medium. You can have a different number allocated to each of them, and then this report will show you what traffic is being generated by each of those different adverts. So again, you know, which ones you're going to renew, which ones you're going to can in the subsequent quarter based upon the response levels that you get on those different adverts. That's what this is useful for. Next report is the calls by half-hour interval. So we're now looking at each half-hour slot in the day and how many calls in or out and the service levels and literally the performance in each of those half-hour periods. Classic question to ask on this one is, when do your customers call you? Now the classic response would probably be something along the lines of, hey, our customers call us between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday, because that's when we're here. Well, that might be when you're there, but isn't necessarily when your customers are calling you. This will tell you whether or not your customers are calling you between 8 and 9 and after 5 o'clock. Correspondingly, most people will know our busiest period is between 10 and 11 on these days of the week or so forth. This will confirm that, but it will also tell you how much busier. People might know where their busiest period is, but they might not know, you know, are they 5, 10, 50, 100% busier. This is very effective for that. So it's great for staffing. So you've got this one at this low granular level, but you've got the other one, calls by day, is now looking on a Monday to Sunday basis. So again, the same question, when do your customers call you? Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. This will show you whether people are calling in at the weekend, and it will also confirm which is the day that is busier and by how much. Next report we'll look at is the desktop wallboard. And this is very, very popular in environments where you're trying to help people do their job more effectively. And at the moment I'm just looking at 15 statistics, but you can go in and you can select and you can change and modify and have as many or as few of those reports and statistics as you require. So these are the fields. These are the ones we've got as standard, but you can add from those lists. And what you're also able to do is set alarms. So we can, for example, say against waiting now, if the number of calls waiting now is higher than 0, we'd like you to flash. We can choose the colours. We can also choose whether or not we want that displayed as a number or as a dashboard instrument. I've got that set for calls waiting now, but also, for example, longest waiting. I can say, look, if the longest waiting call is higher than 15 seconds, voila, it'll start flashing as well. to try and draw attention and make people aware. And again, that's very, very popular up on display on, let's say, large screens and so forth in front of people that are making calls. Correspondingly though, it's also very popular for display on smartphones or tablets, because this is browser based, you can literally have a shortcut on your smartphone so that potentially wherever you are, you might be in a meeting, on site, off site, and click a shortcut on your smartphone and you can potentially see that display. Now, all the reports I've shown you so far are the ones that you get with the 1000. I'm now going to move up to the 2000. The first report in the 2000 is what we call the hunt group list. And what this shows you is if you've got multiple queues, so in this is an example travel agent, so we've got Sales Asia, Australia, USA, other Pacific, etc. You can see all the traffic hitting those different queues. And this is particularly good in environments where you might have people taking calls on different queues, so they can see, prioritise which ones they want to take first and so forth. And I've again got alarms set for number of calls waiting and longest waiting period, and we can count, you can see the traffic on each of those. Now, because we're browser based, in some environments, some people say, actually, do you know what, I would actually like that report shown to me. I'm going to have that on the left hand side of the screen. What I'd also like to see on the right hand side is the desktop wallboard. Or we could even go even more granular than that. We could say, well, we're actually going to see that there, but over here above that we're going to see the extension list, who is or isn't busy on the phone at any one time, or potentially maybe even the BLF, and they're all running simultaneously in real time on the one user account. Now, the other report I'll show you in the 2000 is the calls by account code. So this is the example where someone says, hey, look, we know we make 500 calls a day, week, month, whatever period. But what we don't know is how many of those calls are sales calls, how many of them are complaints, how many of them are how do we find your warehouse, how many are other. And this is where, during the call, on Horizon, you can enter in these digits and you can arbitrarily come up with digits as required for any particular department or new type of work, or as required, and literally just allocate them arbitrarily, and then this will start monitoring them. And you could say, hey, look, this is literally running in real time at the moment, but you can see what the traffic is on those different types of call activity over the week, month, whatever period. Now, what I've shown you so far are very much the reports that you have within the Akixi service, which are all, let's say, call and people activity based. But we can also display other things. So, for example, we can display CNN, a web page. We could display a results page, or it could be traffic information, it could be weather information, it could be anything that's meaningful to the people that you want to see. And you say, well, actually, fine. But why would I want to do that? I can do that in a browser anyway. Well, let me show you. We could, for example, have the situation where someone says, I'll tell you what, I want to show you over here all the different queues, but over here I also want to show that. But I'd like to see other bits of information periodically as well. So within Akixi we have a transitioning feature, which is this button over here. And when you activate that button, it will then, in a slideshow style, go from one screen to the next screen based upon the number of seconds that you say that you want each screen displayed. And bear in mind, that can be any of these reports, but it could be URLs, anything that you've got as information that you want to display to the people. So it's not just a call reporting service, it's a good generic display service as well. And that, I would say, is a whistle-stop tour of the Akixi service. Thanks very much for your time.